Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Piecast. As always, I'm Avram Pilch, joined by Raspberry Pi expert Ash Puckett and Tom's Hardware associate editor Les Pounder. And today's special guest is Raspberry Pi author Dan Aldred. We're really honored to have Dan on with us today. Dan is a big figure in the Raspberry Pi community, and he's written a book, which I have here, Raspberry Pi Projects for Kids. My son and I have been reading through this book. He's actually taken this book to bed with him at night to read it a little bit. I'm not kidding. So it's really cool to be on with someone who is focusing on, I guess Raspberry Pi makes us all feel like kids at heart. But one of the great joys that I have as a parent is sharing Raspberry Pi with my son, who's 8 years old. I know the book here says 11 plus, but my son and I have actually been doing Pi projects since he was 6 or 7. And we were, before that, I think even 5 or so, we were doing some Arduino projects. So, but we kind of feel like we graduated from Arduino to Raspberry Pi, even though there are things that might work better on Arduino. We feel like we can't do it anymore because we've been there, done that, and you don't do you're not doing the same level of programming. So I think it's great when you have a book like this that really is something that has experiences that you as a parent can share with your child, because like that to me has been like the real joy of Raspberry Pi. So Dan, what inspired you to, well, first, why don't you tell everyone about yourself and how you got started with Raspberry Pi and everything.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Dan and I'm a secondary school teacher, head of department. I run obviously a computing department, and I was getting a lift to work with somebody, and they said, "Oh, have you heard about this new computer that's coming along? It's going to be 35 pounds." And I was like, a 35-pound computer? And went on to I think probably BBC News, and found out that, yeah, this 35-pound computer was being created. Went on to various websites to try and buy it. And I don't know if you remember, you couldn't buy them. They were out of stock or they were on pre-order, and had to wait a couple of weeks, but it arrived. And to be honest, I was absolutely blown away. First of all, obviously the size, the cost as well, how cheap it was, but also the practical use within a school. And obviously, teaching computer science, you tend to have a large desktop or a laptop, and using other features with it, other hardware and components, is quite difficult. And yet here was a board that actually was cheap enough to buy a class set, and I could buy other elements for it, LEDs, add-on boards, etc., and inspire the children, or the students that I teach. So that's kind of how I got into Raspberry Pi, and I just started playing around with it. And as with many people, the projects got more complicated, and I wanted to try and do more with it. And you saw someone else do something, I thought, oh, I wonder if I can try that in a classroom. Students would come to me and say, hey, this is good. And and ended up where I am now.
Wow, that's awesome. So, Les, you've known Dan. You actually helped with his book, right?
I did indeed. Yes, I was the what was that, technical reviewer?
Technical reviewer. Keep me on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, Mr. Wolf, basically. Yeah, fixing all the problems. It was great fun, wasn't it? Over those few months of editing the book.
Definitely
great fun. And I've known Dan in the Pi community for how many years now, do you reckon, Dan?
Well, I think it was one of the first Pi academies we were at. So I think I went to Pi Academy 2, and I think you might have been there, or Pi Academy 3, and you were there helping out.
It was the second or third one that was there. Yeah. The one where Spencer was there as well.
Yes, yeah. So potentially was that one. The defining moment for me with Les was we were at the Pi birthday party. And I was at a point where, do I stay in education? Do I, go out and do stuff with the Raspberry Pi? Because it was new at that point. And I thought, well, how much of this is just my own excitement? And I said to Les, I said, you're doing a bit of freelance work. How do you get into it? What, should I sign up for a certain company? Should I do? And he just said, go freelance, because that way you can manage your own time and you can build what you want to without any constraints. And that's, I suppose, the point. I thought, actually, this is good. I'll set a website up, I'll set a YouTube channel up, and I'll just share what I'm doing. And if somebody is interested in it, then fine. And if nobody's interested, that doesn't really matter, because I'm enjoying doing it anyway. And that was so a lot of thanks to Les there, because he was the one who said, don't tie yourself down to a particular path or company or a route. Actually, if you go freelance and just share this stuff, then lots of people see it, and who knows what doors it opens.
Don't worry, mate. I made the mistakes for you. You can learn from my mistakes.
Yeah.
So write this book.
So obviously I share resources, and I also do a lot of obviously workshops. One of them is something called the Deer Shed Festival, which is it's kind of family friendly festival here in North Yorkshire. Up to 10,000 people attend. They have a science tent, and in the science tent they have, as you imagine, science, but they also have a coding section. And we probably see 500-600 kids over a weekend go through the tent and have a go with the Raspberry Pi. And of course, the parents always say to me, "What can I buy? What can I buy? How do I get my kid into this?" And you'll point them in the direction of resources online. And I felt at that point there wasn't a book or resource that was actually aimed at kids. It was either too basic as an introduction, or it was too complicated. And I felt there needed to be something in the middle that was challenging enough, but also covered kind of everyday objects they had in the house, or stuff that a kid or a parent could buy that was fairly cheap. So, a couple of LEDs is going to cost them, a couple of pennies, as opposed to having to spend £50 on something that then a child doesn't use. So that's why I came up with the idea. Let's do something in the middle that actually school age kids would pick up, have a go with, young kids would have a go with, and they could follow it themselves. But it's also fun as well. That was the key drive.
Yeah. I mean, for me and my son, Pi has been a really big deal. We do a ton of Pi projects together. Before we were into Pi, we were doing Arduino and other sorts of things, but now we're like all Pi all the time, pretty much. Although he has other robots that he likes to work with. Right now, this is what I'm showing for those who can't watch is a Sphero Rover, which is a neat robot that kind of works by itself, but you can attach a Raspberry Pi to it, as we've attached a Pi 3B Plus to it, and you can then connect it to some serial UART pins on the rover, and then you can use Sphero's SDK, which I have to say, if anybody from Sphero listens to this, your SDK needs some work. But I mean, it works, but it didn't work after I ran an update, so that's annoying. But you can then use the power of the Pi to drive the car, to use its color sensor. You can attach other things to it, as we have attached a pan and tilt with a couple of servo motors. So it's pretty neat. And I think the thing that's great about your book is it really presents great opportunity for parents to do things with their children. I think obviously different things for different kids, but I think 11 plus is actually underestimating some kids, because my son probably couldn't do these projects all by himself without any of my assistance, but he certainly could benefit from them and probably take them and modify them after. That's what we do a lot today, is he'll work in Python. Now he'll even do Python on his own on his computer, but he has sometimes a little bit problems with the hand-eye coordination of screwing things together or plugging in really tiny jumper cables or things like that. Are still somewhat challenging for him, but the actual understanding of the software is not. So, I think it's great. It's great fun for the whole family.
Yeah, I'm going to say, interesting fact is, originally it wasn't called Raspberry Pi Hacks for Kids. Originally, I don't know if Les remembers this, it was called Raspberry Pi Home Hacks. And the idea was it was going to be making hacks from stuff you had at home. So, you get your LEDs or something, or you get your, the first one is this glue gun hack, where you put it into a silicone mold and you make you program a a glue gun light. And the idea behind it was things that people might have in the home or at work or in the shed. And when they did the marketing, they came back and said the problem with Raspberry Pi Home Hacks is it sounds like a home DIY improvement book rather than a coding book. So that kind of got scrapped, and we have the good name now, Raspberry Pi Home Hacks. Raspberry Pi Projects for Kids. But it's obviously the ethos was still there. The ethos was still there. That it was stuff you could do at home with your kids and with your family.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole joy of it. So speaking of things people have been enjoying, I know, Dan, you have some really interesting projects that you've been working on, including that light display behind you.
Yeah.
Want to share?
Yeah. So, like with many people, I tend to write down a list of projects that I want to try out. I've been working for some LEDs, and I wanted to make a LED animation for a famous musician. Some of you may recognize that as David Bowie. And if you followed it on Twitter, you'll see the various progress of this, but it's nearly finished. And this is an animation, an LED animation to the song Let's Dance. Let's Dance plays, a set of speakers, and then I've coded using Python and NeoPixel library an animation to this. There's a frame to go around it to tidy it up a bit and take the bottom off. I might put some kind of motion sensor, maybe a PIR sensor in it, so that when somebody walks past, it's triggered, or it might end up being a button. But the idea was just to bring a picture to life and make it quite exciting. Again, I think it's inspired from somewhere I saw it was a picture of Freddie Mercury, the famous one, doing his Live Aid AO, the one with his hand up, and they put glitter around it, around the silhouette. And I remember looking at it thinking, oh, this is really cool. I wonder if you could do something with LEDs. And I wrote it down in my book and said, do some kind of LED music hack. And this is where it is now.
What are you using to power that setup behind you?
That is Raspberry Pi, and then the NeoPixel library.
Battery-wise.
Oh, it's not. It's on a 12-volt cable, power cable. So the Raspberry Pi isn't powering it. I run it from the 12 volts power cable, and then just programming it, sending the data to and from the Raspberry Pi pins.
We have a viewer question. Quantos asks, what is Tech Coed?
All right. Okay, so Tech Coed is the original name I came up because as a teacher, I didn't want to put my name down when I created my Twitter account, and I didn't want to put down the YouTube name because obviously teaching in school, I wanted to keep a distinction between being a teacher and then being something else outside. So I came up with Tech Coed, which is teaching, computing, education. So it's the first two letters from each word. So teaching, computing, education. And that's how I came up with Tech Coed.
Martin asks, on Twitter, Dan has a tweet to guess the song for the light show. Did anybody get it?
Somebody did, yeah. Lots of people thought it was Darude Soundstorm, which I kind of thought, that would be quite a good one to have. A lot of people thought it was Bohemian Rhapsody, but somebody did get it, and they said, oh, it's David Bowie. And it was the bit in the middle where the bass plays, and there's the kind of, I can show you later on if you want, but the lights kind of go down in sync to the bass line. And they said, oh, yeah, it's got to be that. So, yeah, somebody did guess it.
So, Dan, you also have a couple of other cool things that we wanted to talk about.
Yep. So I don't know if they were going to work because I've got batteries here to try them out. But the first one to show you was when I said about the glue gun hack. So this is a common one that a lot of people have used. It's not rigged up to the Raspberry Pi, but this is a Iron Man ice cube holder, silicone holder, and all I've done is used a hot glue gun on it to create the Iron Man. So instead of using water and turning it to ice, this is glue, and an LED in the back. And then at the moment I'm just using a battery, but in the book that's the first hack you try out, and you make a light, a simple glue light, which you then program with your Raspberry Pi, and you use a library to make it flash, and then you add a light sensor to it, and you can make a simple night light and stuff like that. So that's one from the book. Nice, easy one. Shall I show you another one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of you may have seen this. This was, I'm just going to get it started. So this is from a while back. This was a night vision camera I built. I'm just going to see if I can get it turned on. So I was at a car boot sale and I acquired for about 50p or £1 this old flash from a camera system. And I thought, oh, this is good because I can cut out something on the front and I can add a infrared camera. And Pimoroni have got their display. I can't remember what it's called now.
The hyperpixel?
Hyperpixel display, that's the one, which are then mounted in there. And then hopefully, if I can get it to run, I can then control, this should load up in a minute. There's a little GUI I wrote in Python Easy GUI. There we go. You can probably just see that. So it's a set of commands for like turning it on for 30 seconds or taking a photograph or a video. And you can then obviously see on the display what the camera sees. So if I just put it on for like 30 seconds or something. Now, obviously, you're going to see the ceiling, so I'll try and turn it around so you can see something. So that's the computer next to me. You probably see the guitar in the corner.
Yep.
And that works in the dark. It's fantastic. I've pressed 5 minutes, so that will stay on for 5 minutes now. But the idea is you could go out walking and, you know, you look in your night vision camera, point it around and see what was happening. And it
what
also
kind of camera is that?
This is... I don't know what brand it is. It was one off of eBay. It was only a couple of pounds, but it's got the IR sensors built in, and then the camera mounted in the middle.
So Quantos asks, "Is that Met's flash?"
Yes, it is. Yeah. Originally, is this what he tells? Is this where he tells me they're worth a lot of money, and I shouldn't have taken it apart?
Probably.
Yeah, that's a funny story about valuable devices and valuable hacks, because I don't know if you saw, I built the Battleships game with LED and the telephone, and the telephone is a Swiss. I've got it over there. It's a Swiss Bakelite phone, and there's an antique shop around the corner from where I live, and they've sold it off, or the owners have sold it, and they're converting it into a nice house. And he was selling off the stuff really cheap, and I bought this old Swiss telephone for about £3. Anyway, long story short, I was looking around to find out about the wiring in it, and I came across a auction house, and they were selling it for £2,000. And I was thinking, what is going on? This is, I've basically ripped all the innards out of this phone. And then I realized that it was an auction of the estate of Audrey Hepburn, and she had 3 of these telephones, and they were selling one of them off at £2,000. And I thought, thank goodness, that's all right. I haven't destroyed, I haven't destroyed this phone or this valuable item. So yeah, I do have to be careful about what I'm taking apart. But if I paid 50p for it, then it's not a problem.
So I know you also have a retro viewer.
I've got a retro review which isn't working at the moment, but you may have seen it on my YouTube page. It was also on the Raspberry Pi blog. But this again is £1 or £2 from a charity shop. It's an old Argus slide viewer. You can actually see where the slides would have popped in there. And I drilled a button into the back, and I mounted an cheap OLED screen inside, which you can probably just see there. But obviously this magnifying feature here, or component, obviously makes the screen bigger. So I'm just trying to get my angles right. There we go. And what happens is it plays on the OLED and then is magnified and plays in there. But for some reason it's not booting up. I do apologize. I'll plug it back in and try it again. So, and yeah, basically what I've got is 10 or 15 different videos on there which get rendered into the black and white using the pill library. And each time you press the button, it plays one of the videos. But it doesn't want to do it tonight for some reason.
Cool. Quantos asks about those cameras. Yeah, there's a whole lot of them on Amazon. I had one in a drawer. I have another. I mean, there's a lot with different brands. I have one. So it's somebody asked a question. Let's see. To me, Geekware asks, I showed my Pi-powered vehicle. How does this compare with a Lego vehicle that is used in Lego League competitions? I don't know. Well, I'll put it this way: the Sphero rover. So I shouldn't say this is my Pi-powered vehicle. Sphero makes this, right? The way it comes is without the Pi on it and without any motors on it, but you can drive it and program it without a Raspberry Pi, and it also works with other boards too. I think it'll work with an Arduino or maybe even a microbit. So it is a Pi compatible rolling tank. Now, if you're in the US, this is actually on a great sale right now. I'm not getting commission for saying this, but on Amazon, this is normally like a $200 thing, because the one thing that's really neat about the rover is it's kind of professional grade. Like you can drive it outside. The treads are made to do that, and it has a really robust battery in it that charges separately, and you can get extra batteries and things like that. It's $128 now on Amazon, which is a good deal for it. The reason that we're messing with this right now is that one of our prior guests, who I'm sure we'll have on here again, Stan from Surrogate TV. Surrogate TV has one of these Sphero rovers, and they are doing a thing where people can remote drive it around Helsinki, Finland, which is where they are. And they've been having a whole bunch of live streams of them taking this and driving it on the subway and driving it like all kinds of to the mall, all kinds of crazy places in Helsinki, which I love because I love seeing Helsinki. And they've done a much more fancy attachment than I have here. They're using a GoPro camera and all kinds of things on it to make it look really good. But this is very robust. So I think in comparison to what people are using in Lego League, this is probably much more robust, but there's no really building involved in it. It comes put together. So if you're looking to build something, attached to the Raspberry Pi is fun, but the build part of it is there's really not much to it. If you want to build a robot, I more recommend something that's a little bit more from scratch. Last thing my son and I actually built that was like we had to do more screwing things together is this Pimoroni STS Pi, which you get the bottom and the wheels and the motors, but then you had to bring your own Pi and your own hat, which we got, and your own battery, which we attached, and your own camera. So it's a little bit more labor there. If you enjoy the labor, there's a lot of really neat Raspberry Pi car kits out there where you build things. So a lot of neat things to play with. So speaking of things people have built, Ash has built something really, really interesting for keeping track of her turtles with Raspberry Pi.
I call it a turtle monitor. So creative. No, so this system lets me monitor my turtle in real time. I've got one Raspberry Pi configured to monitor the water level of the tank. It's programmed to take a measurement about every 3 seconds. It's using an ultrasonic sensor. And what I'm going to do is switch my camera over. And you can see underneath me, there's a string of numbers that keep popping up from this terminal window. And that's real-time data from the ultrasonic sensor. And whenever it detects that the water level is getting too low, it'll send me a text message to my phone using Twilio. And the main problem if the water level gets too low is if you can see for anyone watching and not listening, you can actually see a video feed of my turtle. And when that water level gets too low, the little floating dock doesn't exactly float anymore. And that's a problem. So I wanted a system that can notify me way before my turtle was uncomfortable. Oh, and also that live web feed, what I like to do ultimately is get like a Flask web server or some kind of a web server where I could host the video feed of the turtle and the ultrasonic sensor data in real time, so I could just pull it up on my phone and see what's going on with my turtle. Oh, I can't hear you, Avram.
Oh, sorry. Could you get machine learning to do shell recognition?
Shell recognition? Probably
Yes.
Get my turtles and tell which one is which.
Yes. Tell
was going to ask it, has it got a GUI or is it just a shell
It's just a shell
interface?
interface. That's
Well, you don't want to bash the shell.
oh my goodness.
So we're actually Ash is going to put up an article on tomshardware.com about how to do that project. So that's going to be really cool. And speaking of projects that we have videos up on and articles up on, I just want to take a minute to promote an article from Caroline Dunn that we put up over the weekend, which also uses an ultrasonic sensor to do a project, which is it is a toilet paper reminder system. So what you do is you get a toilet paper holder, you put that holds 4 rolls. I think this is in addition to the roll that you're actually using. And then you point an ultrasonic sensor from a Raspberry Pi 0W down at it. And when it shows that there's plenty of distance, meaning like all your rolls are gone, it will send you an email reminding you to bring some toilet paper to the bathroom or order some more. So that way you'll never be left without a square to spare. So these are some of the unique smart home gadgets that you can make with Raspberry Pi that I don't think a lot of companies will make, and you can have a lot of fun doing it. So speaking of things that are a lot of fun to do, Les has been experimenting with ways that you can actually get your Raspberry Pi to look like Windows.
Indeed, I have. Yes, I've been messing around with Twister OS, which is based on Raspberry Pi OS, but it looks very different. So I'm going to switch over to the feed now, and hopefully this is going to work. Yep. You can see right now, this is Twister OS, and you can also see me in the corner. Hopefully it's working. This is Twister OS. It's set to look like Mac OS right now, but it is underneath all of this just a standard Raspberry Pi OS. If I just put NeoFetch in to tell me more details, you can see it's Raspbian. It's got 8 gig of RAM, it's an 8 gig Pi 4 that I'm using, and it's got the theme of Catalina, which is Mac OS. But if I wanted to change that, well, I can. There's something in the bottom left called Theme Twister. If I double click on that, I can change my theme to any of these 8. So Twister OS is their own bespoke theme. Windows 95, anyone? Windows XP. Nighthawk and Raspbian X, which are Windows 10. And then we have the Mac OS variants here. And of course, Windows 7, because we still do like Windows 7 occasionally. But I'm going to put
Vista.
it onto... No Vista. We don't mention Vista. There's no Windows ME either, so... So I'm going to put it into Windows 10 mode now. So this is going to force a reboot of the whole system, but hopefully I'm going to fill in plenty of time and talk about the features while it reboots. So it's going to come up with the boot screen. It's going to tell me what bootloader I've got, and it should be the July version of the bootloader that I've got. It's upside down as well, or wrong way around. It is on my screen. And there's a rainbow saying I'm all working, and it's going to take a few seconds to boot up. And I've overclocked this Pi to 2 gigahertz using a built-in tool, which I'm going to show you in a second. And the difference between Twister OS and Raspbian isn't that it can look like a different operating system. Under the hood, there is so much more that can be done. So we have extra applications. We have, let's see, Commander Pi, which is not a character from Star Trek. Commander Pi is a graphical user interface to basically overclock your Pi, check the CPU details, and it's really rather good. So I use this today to overclock this Pi. Oh yeah, don't overclock, it's dangerous, it's done at your own risk. I use it to overclock this Pi to 2 gigahertz by using the recommended values. But it also says what my maximum could be. Now these are not, what's the word? They're not gospel. They're not going to say this is the absolute maximum. You could push it a little more if you had the skills to do so. But this is what the software is recommending. But I can just make these changes in here. So I can type in the numbers and press set. I'm not going to do this right now because it's already set. But just type in the numbers that it recommends or set my own values and then reboot and it'll overclock the Pi. Really nice and easy. But we've also got other bits and pieces. If I go into the menu and just show you what we've got here, So we've got the standard programming such as Genie and Phony for writing Python code, that sort of thing. Educational software, games. There are games on this as well. There's a very good version of Metroid 2, which I spent maybe 15 minutes playing this afternoon. Testing, of course. And it worked exceptionally well. There's DOSBox on here as well, so we can run old DOS games. So if you have a penchant for Wing Commander or Secret of Monkey Island or Maniac Mansion, something like that, you can play it. There's a version of Steam on here. I've not tested this yet. I'm saving that treat for later. But if you can play some simple Steam games of some sort, brilliant. RetroPie is installed by standard. It needs some configuration for your ROMs, your joysticks in your machines, that sort of thing, but it's there ready to go.
Does it run in a window?
It runs full screen, that one. And we have Wine, so the Windows abstraction layer. It's not an emulator. It sort of just makes your computer think it's running Windows software. And we've got ZSNES, which is a very old emulator, which I've played in the late 90s. That's how old it is. On an old, what was it now? DX4, probably, or a Pentium back in the day. And it also has some extra software, which you can install. So I installed Alien vs. Predator because I needed to be scared senseless. Great game, very scary. And I installed it using some software called PyKiss, which I'm going to start up now. Just give it a second. Curse of a live demo. There we go. PyKiss, we've actually covered on Tom's Hardware in an article. It's fantastic. It abstracts away all the complexity of setting up certain pieces of software on the Pi. So in this case, I can tweak some bits and pieces of my machine. So CPU performance, what packages are there. I can install games. So Aliens vs. Predator, Blood, Crispy Doom, because we all love Doom. And it runs on pregnancy tests as well, apparently. Hurricane. If anyone remembers Turrican for the Amiga, I do.
I see Morrowind.
Morrowind. Never played that. I've never played any Eldar Scroll games.
Oh, missing out.
I played Quake, though. There's Quake. And Mario 64, of course, the classic. But we've also got extra bits and pieces for multimedia, so Kodi, kiosk software, just to run the Pi as a simple kiosk in a shop. OBS as well for the Pi. I've never tested that. Not properly. I should try that one day. But there's lots of other bits and pieces on here that you can mess around with. And this all comes pre-installed with Twister OS. So it's a free download. You go to twisteros.com, download the latest version, and it will show you all this wonderful extra bits of software, but it still runs the standard stuff, such as the Pi camera, GPIO, all the bits and pieces that we all know and love from standard Raspberry Pi OS. And we can just run it, but have a really nice user interface.
So is this built on top of Buster?
It's built on the latest 32-bit version of Raspberry Pi OS.
Wow. So if you run sudo apt update, are you going to be kept up to date like you would with Raspberry Pi OS?
You will, yes. Twist has also got its own update scheme as well. So all the stuff that is set for Raspberry Pi OS, all the default bits and pieces will update as normal when a new release comes out and new updates come out. But anything that's bespoke to Twister OS, such as the themes and extra configuration steps that they've taken to make their own version, that will be updated using their updater, which is really easy. It's just a double click and it updates.
Wow.
Is it just a 32-bit edition?
Just for now, yeah. 64-bit still in the beta experimental. But hopefully when 64-bit becomes stable and offered to the general public for general use, and hopefully we'll see an update.
Wow. So that's really impressive. Dan, had you seen that before?
I'd seen an XP skin, but nothing as impressive as that. I've added it to my list of things to try out and have a go. I like the fact it's got all the games on it and the emulators. Really cool. Really good.
Yeah, I tested a few of those just to make sure.
Yeah, make sure they're working.
It's really neat.
So it's really good for schools as well, because often you obviously use the Raspberry Pi OS, but sometimes it's very different for kids moving from, say, a Windows or a Mac to suddenly go into Linux, but to have those different skins and to be able to kind of pretend that they're on a similar computer, and then gradually roll it back to the Linux Buster interface is really good. It's a good carrot and stick to get them into using it again.
Yes,
cool.
I want to figure out how to run it looking like OS2. Or my personal favorite, BOS. But
BOS, I've not used that for years. I think I used that from a cover disk.
Right. Well, I think they stopped updating it like 1998, but it was so good. Anyway, I want to thank our special guest, Dan Aldred.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Book, Raspberry Pi Projects for Kids, is available now wherever books are sold. As always, we are here with the Tom's Hardware Podcast at 7:30 p.m. BST, 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, and you can watch us on YouTube or Facebook after the fact, or listen to us wherever podcasts are distributed. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thanks very much.